I never imagined the people who gave me life would one day make me feel like I was nothing. For years I dreamed of my graduation day. I worked hard, stayed up late, balanced jobs and studies until my eyes burned, and every sacrifice felt like a step toward that proud moment. I wanted my parents to see me walking across the stage, to smile and say they were proud of Aaliyah. But that day never came. I waited outside the auditorium gate, my gown heavy on my shoulders, my phone in my hand, hoping for even a single text. Friends and classmates were hugging their parents, taking pictures, laughing and celebrating while I stood alone. I forced a smile as if everything was fine, but inside I felt hollow. The next day I found out my parents had gone to a relative's house to collect some money, $2,100. I could not believe it. The day I achieved something I worked my whole life for. They chose money over me. At that moment, I realized that love and pride could be sold, and that I was not part of their priorities. I wanted to call them, to beg for an explanation, but I already knew what they would say. I felt an icy emptiness inside that I had never known before, as if my childhood memories, the laughter, and warmth I once associated with them had all been illusions. My graduation should have been a celebration of years of sacrifice, but instead, it became a quiet testimony to how little I mattered. I stayed in my room that evening, staring at my phone, wishing for a family that was no longer mine. The betrayal was sharp, unforgettable, and it planted the seed of independence and self-respect inside me. Days went by, and my parents acted as though nothing had happened. They did not ask about my graduation, my feelings, or how I had spent that day waiting for them. My mother simply said we needed money to pay off some bills, and my father added that there would be more graduations in life. I knew deep down there would never be another moment like that. Their absence had carved a permanent space of sorrow in my heart. One evening, they asked me for help. They wanted me to give them my savings, the money I had been carefully collecting to rent my own apartment. I told them no. Their expressions changed immediately. I was suddenly selfish, ungrateful, disrespectful. My father raised his voice, claiming family always comes first. I told him I had given enough, and that I had the right to start my own life. My mother looked at me with disappointment, and said I had changed. I realized then that I had indeed changed, not because of me, but because they had shown me their true colors. Money mattered more than their own child. The anger and betrayal inside me burned, but clarity emerged alongside it. I could finally see who they were. They were not the loving parents I had once believed in. They were people who put wealth above family bonds. I felt a mix of sadness, shock, and growing determination. That night, I sat alone in my room, tears rolling down my cheeks, reflecting on every childhood memory, every moment of support I had expected from them. I promised myself that I would never again let anyone undermine my worth. That promise became the foundation of Aaliyah's resolve. The following morning was worse than I could have imagined. There was loud banging on my door. When I opened it, I saw police officers standing there. My heart raced, my hands shook. They said someone had reported me for theft. I could not believe my ears. My parents stood behind the officers, faces calm and innocent, while they accused me of stealing money I had earned myself. I tried to explain, but the officers said they just needed to ask a few questions. My parents did not intervene, watching silently as if enjoying my discomfort. Being questioned in front of neighbors was humiliating. I felt trapped, angry, and betrayed all at once. At the station, I provided proof of my savings and my honest work. The officers apologized after verifying everything, but I felt no relief. I felt emptiness and disbelief that the people who were supposed to love me had put me through this ordeal. My mother said it was for my own good. They claimed they only wanted to teach me a lesson. I understood then that their concept of family was warped. I left the station and walked the streets alone, cold air cutting across my face. I realized that night that independence was no longer optional. It was necessary for survival. Aaliyah had been hurt deeply, but she had also grown stronger. Betrayal had shown her her limits and her power. From that moment, I knew I would never allow anyone to manipulate me again, not even my parents. The experience left a scar but also ignited determination. I started a new life far from them. It was not easy but slowly, peace began to return. I rented a small apartment, found a job that I loved, and began building a life that was truly my own. Every morning I reminded myself that I no longer needed their approval or validation. But forgetting was impossible. At night, memories of my graduation haunted me. I could still see the empty seats where they should have been. I remembered the smiles on my friends' faces as their parents cheered them on while I clutched my diploma alone. I had wanted them to be proud of Aliyah, but instead, they chose money over their child. Sometimes anger bubbled up, and I imagined telling them how wrong they were, how cruel it felt, but I never did. I realized that their absence had already said more than words ever could. Silence had become my revenge. I learned to focus on small victories. Paying bills on time, getting a promotion, making friends who respected and cared for me. Every achievement reminded me that I had survived betrayal, and that I could thrive without them. Occasionally, they reached out through messages, asking for help or trying to reconnect, but I did not respond. I stared at their words for a long time, weighing if it mattered to reply, and then deleted them. They had chosen money over me, and now I chose my peace. My life became a testament to resilience. I began seeing the streets, the places of my childhood, with a different perspective. Each corner reminded me that independence had been forced upon me, but I embraced it. Freedom had its weight, but I was learning to carry it with grace. Aliyah had transformed from a girl waiting for her parents' approval into a woman who understood the value of self-worth. Years passed and life began to feel normal, almost serene. I built a career, surrounded myself with friends who treated me like family, and started enjoying life's little victories. I could laugh without guilt, travel without hesitation, and celebrate achievements without needing anyone's approval. Yet memories struck like storms. The empty graduation hall, the way my parents smiled for money but ignored me, lingered in my mind. One evening, a message appeared on my phone from my sister. She said that our parents spoke about me and missed me. A part of me wanted to respond, to explain how wrong they were, to express the pain of every betrayal and humiliation. Another part wanted to feel anger and vengeance. But I realized I had already won the greatest victory. I had dignity, freedom, and life itself. I chose not to let them steal that from me. I wrote nothing, deleted the message, and looked out at the city lights. That night, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. True, unshakable peace. The kind that comes from surviving heartbreak and betrayal, and rising stronger. I understood that their choices were theirs, and my choice was to live without bitterness. They had chosen money over me, but I had chosen myself, happiness, and independence. The lesson was harsh, but it was mine to carry and mine to honor. Over time, I began to reflect on the past more calmly. I remembered my childhood, the moments I had laughed with my parents, the hugs, the small words of encouragement. And I realized those memories were real, but the betrayal had changed everything. I was no longer that naive girl who expected unconditional love. Aliyah had grown, shaped by pain and resilience. I also noticed how strong I had become, capable of handling challenges they never prepared me for. Every decision I made now was mine alone. I could travel, invest, dream, and fall without their approval. I had learned that life's hardest lessons often teach the greatest strength. Occasionally, my parents tried subtle manipulation, asking for favors, making small comments about what I owed them, but I saw through it immediately. I no longer felt guilt. I had been conditioned to obey and serve, but now I served only myself. I had learned that independence is more than financial stability. It is mental freedom, emotional resilience, and choosing peace over anger. Every time I remembered my graduation, I felt a surge of pain, but also gratitude. Pain had been my teacher. I could look at myself in the mirror and say Aliyah had survived betrayal and emerged stronger. Life continued with small triumphs and joys. I made friends who genuinely cared, colleagues who respected me, and moments of love and laughter that I had never known in my family home. I even began mentoring younger girls, sharing my experiences so they could avoid mistakes and value their self-worth. The memory of my parents' betrayal was no longer a chain but a compass, guiding me toward stronger relationships and better choices. Occasionally, I wondered what had happened to them, whether they ever regretted their decisions. But the curiosity was fleeting. I understood that their path was their own, and my focus was entirely on mine. I traveled alone for the first time, feeling freedom I had never imagined, walking streets in cities far from home, knowing no one could betray me again. Aaliyah was now a woman who defined herself through resilience, courage, and independence. Every achievement reminded me that I was not dependent on the love or approval of those who had abandoned me. My life was mine and I intended to live it fully. Finally, I reached a place of clarity and peace that I had never thought possible. I could remember the pain without being consumed by it. I could reflect on my parents' choices and acknowledge them without allowing them to define my happiness. I realized that true revenge was not in making them suffer, but in living well, thriving, and never returning to that dependence. I celebrated small successes with genuine joy, feeling gratitude for the hardships that had shaped me. When I looked back at my graduation day, I no longer felt anger, but a quiet resolve. Aaliyah had survived betrayal, humiliation, and heartbreak. She had chosen herself, her happiness, and her future. Their choice to prioritize money over love had taught her that life is unpredictable and sometimes cruel, but it is also filled with opportunities to rise stronger, to define self-worth, and to embrace freedom. I had learned that no one has the power to diminish me unless I allow it. I had survived and now I thrived, free from the shadows of those who once abandoned me.